Several months ago, I posted what turned out to be the most viewed video that I've ever put up about Baltimore's newest, most expensive, and very sparsely populated waterfront development, the Baltimore Peninsula. Despite gleaming new buildings and perfectly manicured landscaping, the place felt like a ghost town, and within 30 minutes of walking around the neighborhood, I only encountered several other people the entire time, most of whom were either security guards or maintenance staff. So I decided to go back. I wanted to see what kind of progress has been made since the last time I was there, and I also wanted to see if maybe going back at a different time of day would lead to a different vibe. Last time I went there around 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning. This time I went back on a weekday evening around 5:30. Some viewers suggested that maybe going after work on a weekday would show the working crowd and maybe the area would feel more alive when they're around. On the day I went, it was breezy and overcast, about 70 degrees, so while it wasn't perfectly ideal walking around weather, it was certainly pleasant enough to be out and about. So what were my initial impressions this time around? To put it bluntly, it still feels like a ghost town. Since it was rush hour, there was a lot more car traffic in the area, both from employees leaving the Under Armour headquarters and also from some highway traffic cutting through the area. But despite all these additional cars, I didn't really see a whole lot more foot traffic as I walked around. A few new restaurants have opened since I was last there, like this fast casual vegan restaurant and a Ben & Jerry's ice cream. But the feel overall was incredibly similar to last time, eerily empty. It still feels like the area is far enough away from the significant foot traffic that it needs to support the kind of retail that would make the area interesting to visit. And thus, the neighborhood is still faced with the chicken and egg scenario I mentioned last time. No one goes there because there's nothing to do, but there's nothing to do because no one goes there. There were a few new coming soon signs in the windows of retail spaces, including a karaoke bar and a coffee shop, but it appears that a large number of the first floor retail spaces were still unfinished. Many still even had gravel floors in them. I have no idea what the rents are for these retail spaces, but it seems like the value proposition for renting at the peninsula doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now. Maybe things will change going forward, but for now it seems like businesses will be paying high rent for minimal foot traffic. Clearly a bad combination for retail. Since I was there last, one of the biggest changes has been the opening of the Under Armour headquarters. It was under construction when I was there last, but now it appears to be fully functional. While this did cause a big increase in the number of cars in the area, I didn't really notice that translating to a more vibrant feel for the peninsula because it seemed like none of the foot traffic really carried over to the rest of the peninsula. Under Armour's building is nice, but it's a far cry from what executives were hoping for back during the company's precipitous rise. The original renderings of the campus envisioned a world-class facility. While the current one is nice, it's an unspectacular office building that would fit in most suburban areas around the country. Recent economic events have made the company's future even more uncertain, as a lot of their apparel is manufactured overseas, which is a little dicey right now. Currently, Under Armour's market cap sits at around $2.5 billion, a major fall from the close to $20 billion that it was a decade ago, back when the original planning for the campus started. While Under Armour is just one tenant of the peninsula, it's unquestionably seen as the cornerstone of the project, so downsizing for Under Armour likely means downsizing for the peninsula project as a whole. The most common pushback I've heard to my previous video was that the project is still new and that it just needs some more time to develop. But this is a project where planning goes back a decade, and lucrative tax incentives were passed by the Baltimore City Council 8 years ago. While it's true that there were a number of unforeseen challenges that came up and slowed this project down, the reality is that the project's lagging far behind where many people hoped it would be a decade after starting. I think development will continue slowly over the years, and eventually, probably decades from now, it'll be a functioning neighborhood. Another thing to keep in mind when thinking about the success or failure of the current project, while the peninsula was certainly underutilized prior to this project starting, it wasn't completely dead. Prior to the beginning of this redevelopment scheme, there was a Walmart and a Sam's Club. There was also the Baltimore Sun facility and a number of small and medium-sized businesses scattered around the peninsula. So at this point, here in 2025, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent, almost a decade's passed, and I think a valid argument could be made that the area was actually more useful to the average Baltimore resident prior to the project even starting. One other interesting thing to note, the highway noise that I complained about last time coming from I-95 didn't seem as annoying this time around, but I think that was primarily due to the time of day. Because I-95 was jammed with rush hour traffic, the speeds were a lot lower, so less noise. Also, because there was a lot more vehicle traffic in the immediate neighborhood, that made the highway traffic a lot less noticeable off in the distance. There was one major bright spot that I saw in my trip back to the Baltimore Peninsula, and that was the progress of the other projects in the area that aren't specifically a part of the original Port Covington Baltimore Peninsula project. There's 2 mostly completed apartment buildings down near Nick's Fish House and a number of 2 townhouse apartments in the area as well. Unlike the original project that made headlines for months and months and got large tax incentives and had the backing of lots of public figures in the city of Baltimore, this other one sort of went under the radar. But I think they have a lot of things going for them that the bigger, more well-known Baltimore Peninsula doesn't. Most importantly, they're centered around a marina, ferry bar park, and the South Baltimore classic Nick's Fish House. They just have a less artificial feel to them. They feel like a more organic development. Unlike the Port Covington project, while all parts of the peninsula have water views, the views down in this other part of the peninsula are unique due to the proximity to the historic Hanover Street Bridge. I think it's very possible that within 2 years, this area that wasn't the recipient of the big tax incentives, will surpass the original development project as the most vibrant part of the peninsula. These things that I'm talking about may seem silly: a seafood restaurant, a small waterfront park, the visual of boats in the water with the backdrop of the historic Hanover Street Bridge, but I think they're exactly what's missing from the main Baltimore Peninsula project. The big original project, the one spearheaded by Kevin Plank and backed by so many public officials, focused on becoming a whole new entity, a city in a city. Those were the exact words of the people that were planning the project. Essentially, they wanted it to be independent of Baltimore. And I think, unfortunately, that really shows. It shows a complete lack of identity. There's no authenticity and virtually no connection to the past or any South Baltimore history. This lack of identity became blatantly obvious during the multiple rebrandings from the original Port Covington to the questionable Cybertown, USA to the current Baltimore Peninsula. Sure, the apartments are nice in the big original development, and who doesn't love some Ben & Jerry's ice cream every now and then? But the truth is, people want to feel a connection to the place that they live and where they spend their time. Whether it's a cramped studio apartment in Manhattan or a historic farmhouse in Iowa, the connection and the community is what makes people stay. And I think that's exactly what's missing from the Baltimore Peninsula project. The minds behind the project would be well served to take some cues from these other smaller, more organic developments and do what they can to make the original Baltimore Peninsula Port Covington project feel less sterile and detached. And speaking of detached, I'm going to reiterate one more thing that I harped on in my last video, and that's the need for transportation connections to be made to the Baltimore Peninsula through multiple modes of transportation. Right now, it's extremely car-centric, which adds to the feeling of detachment. But even traveling there via car isn't really all that great because of the poor quality streets like nearby Hanover Street and Macomb Street. Improving pedestrian access, encouraging mass transit, and resurfacing deteriorated streets could go a long way in not only bringing new people into the peninsula, but also to help the peninsula feel more connected to the rest of the city of Baltimore. The takeaway from this video is largely the same as the takeaway from the last video. Nice but underwhelming buildings, very sparse foot traffic, a few more businesses have come into the area, but vacancies remain high. Hopefully this area is able to benefit from the progress of the unrelated, seemingly more organic projects that are taking off nearby. But the future of the area is uncertain, and it may not be fully known how it's going to turn out for decades to come. Thanks for watching. New videos out every weekend. Please subscribe if you're interested in more videos like this one. Next week I got a cool one out of Pittsburgh.